Hey guys, just leaving the gym on my way to Costco for my weekly meat haul for myself and my dogs. Costco has 3-pound packs of Wagyu ground beef for $10. Can't beat that, especially for your dogs. I eat their grass-fed, grass-finished beef. It's a little bit more expensive, about twice as expensive. But I try to feed my dogs raw ground beef, and you won't find ground beef cheaper than $3.33 a pound in many places, especially not here where I am. That's cheap. So anyway, perfect time to talk about the subject. I made a post yesterday. Someone posted like a little meme saying that it's impossible to attain spiritual ascension, you know, something along those lines, if you're eating the carcasses of rotting, tortured animals. And so I want to talk about that because that's complete and utter nonsense. The ethics of eating meat from a spiritual point of view. So here's the deal. Everything about your biology and your physiology screams for the consumption of animal products. All right? Everything runs on animal fat, and anything plant-based will either not have the same nutrients that you need at all, like B vitamins and creatine and carnitine and carnosine and all of these. Vitamin D3 is not found in the plant kingdom at all. There's different types of vitamin D. There's vitamin D2. You can get that from eating mushrooms, but that is not the preferred bioavailable source of vitamin D. And of course, you can get your vitamin D the best way is just by exposing yourself to sunlight. But there's so many nutrients that you cannot get from plants at all. You cannot get vitamin A from plants. Beta carotene or carotenoids are not vitamin A. They can be converted into vitamin A by the body, but only like barely half of the population has the ability to do so. So, like, you're not getting vitamin A from plants. You're just not. And you're not getting retinol from plants. You're going to get it from meat. Retinol is found in meat. That's the most bioavailable form. If you weren't designed to eat meat, then the most bioavailable form would be from the plants. And it's the most bioavailable form is from the meat. So, like, you know, not to mention, your brain is made from saturated fat and cholesterol. Okay? And of course, we know for a fact that it is not animal-based products that cause heart disease. So if you want a healthy brain and then a healthy heart, then you want to avoid plant products, because plant products are what cause diabetes or sugar toxicity. And sugar toxicity leads to heart disease. Every person who has heart disease has diabetes, whether diagnosed or not. And you do not get diabetes from eating plant product or from animal products. You get it from eating plant products. Okay, so it's just absolutely absurd that all of the things that are bad for you are plant-based, and all of the things that are good for you are animal-based. And that's not to say that everything animal-based is good for you. Like, I don't eat industrial pork at all. I very rarely eat chicken. I don't eat seafood at all. I eat pasture-raised and pasture-finished beef, where the cow has eaten nothing but beef or grass its entire life. And that is the most vegan thing on the planet that you can eat, because vegan food, plant-based agriculture, is mass animal slaughter. So, like, you know, you're not getting any ethical points for eating plants when the animals that you kill to eat are just left to rot in the field or whatever, or poison, you know, can't be consumed by humans. At least the animals that are killed for my food are used to nourish me, and my biology and my physiology are made for that specific you know, source of food, which is animal fats and protein and nothing else. Now, there might be some outliers. There might be certain genetic lineages that do well or tolerate better a certain level of carbohydrate intake, but we are all designed to be meat eaters. First and foremost, primary, the foundation of our diet, at least 70% should be meat. And you cannot connect the spirit when your hardware is all gummed up from lack of nutrition and from toxicity overload, right? So not all vegans have elevated blood sugar. A lot of vegans are raw vegans. They eat nothing but leafy green and cruciferous vegetables and avocados. Maybe their avocado intake helps their brain function a little bit. But I mean, like, take Awaken the World. If you guys have ever watched Awaken the World documentaries, they're some of the best spiritual documentaries you'll ever see. Very, very good mix of quantum mechanics and Eastern, Buddhist, Taoist, Hindu philosophy about the self, about awakening. Their Samsara, the Samadhi series. They've got like 3 or 4 Samadhi movies that are really good. Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds was a documentary that really put me back on the spiritual path. And the guy who made them is the sweetest guy in the world. He's not your typical militant vegan that I know of. Like, I've never even seen him advocate for veganism, but he's very obviously vegan because he's emaciated. He's got rampant sarcopenia. His face is sunken in. He looks like he's dying, because he is. And I got nothing against him personally, but it's just an example of how someone who is deeply spiritual and has fooled himself into thinking that, you can't consume animal flesh and be spiritual, most likely. I don't know what his reasons for being vegan are, but there's really no ethical or philosophical reason that's valid. But he looks like he's dying. And to me, I feel like a spiritual person should look like an optimal human. Like, why would a spiritual person have to look like Mahatma Gandhi? Why would you have to look like a corpse? Like a Holocaust victim. Like the guy didn't eat. The guy, he wasn't healthy. And it's an incredible testament to the resilience of the human body that you're able to endure that long while just completely depriving your body of what it needs to be optimal and thrive. It has an incredible survival mechanism, but that doesn't mean that it's good. It doesn't mean that it's good just to starve yourself. It doesn't mean it's spiritual to starve yourself. Consciousness doesn't come from the brain. We know that, especially in the spiritual community. We know that it doesn't come from the brain. It doesn't originate in the brain. Every time they try and find consciousness in the brain, there's no one home. They've removed large parts of the brain, and because the brain consciousness is holographic. So, like, if you take a holographic plate of an apple and you shine a laser on it, you get an apple. Now, if you take that plate and you cut it in half and you shine the laser on it, you don't get half the apple. You get the whole apple at half the coherence. So, and that's what the brain does. So, like, you remove parts of the brain, you're not like cutting their consciousness in half. You're just chopping up the coherence of consciousness. So there's people who have, like, it's called hydroencephalitis, where there's no brain material at all. It's just a brain it's just a membrane holding in cerebral spinal fluid. And I wouldn't say that they're Einstein, but Einstein, by the way, was a genius, but he had all kinds of health problems, and he was a vegetarian. Horrible health problems his whole life. But anyway, they'll teach rats to go through a maze, and then they'll start removing parts of its brain, and the rat never really loses its ability to go through the maze, no matter how much of their brain they remove. So, they have more difficulty getting through it, but they still manage to get through it. Like, they might bump into a wall or whatever, but they're still, consciousness is still coming through their brain, even though it's gone. It's really weird. So anyway, and a lot of people will say that like the heart has its own electromagnetic field, and that is part of our conscious matrix, kind of. And I just don't see how eating things that are going to damage the heart and damage the blood vessels and damage and deprive the heart of what it needs to function properly is going to cause you to have a higher spiritual experience. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe I'm not going to deprive anybody of their own personal experience. Maybe you've just started to starve yourself like Gandhi, and you stopped eating meat. Maybe you've had a higher connection to spirit. I don't know. I'm not going to deprive anybody of their own personal experience. But when I was eating a plant-based diet, and I was never vegan or vegetarian, but the standard American diet is overwhelmingly plant-based. When I was eating a plant-based diet, I was a freaking mess. I didn't have any energy at all. I didn't have any mental clarity or cognition at all. And so it just doesn't make any sense. And by the way, like I said, grass-fed, grass-finished, these animals are not tortured. And rotting is an emotionally weighted term. Everything is rotting. You know what I mean? Like, if you eat vegetables, they rot. They rot in your digestive system. That's what fermentation is. That's what's going on in your body when you eat things. That's why you get bloated and gassy after you eat broccoli. It's fermenting in your gut. The fiber does not digest. It rots in your gut. Meat doesn't rot in your gut. Meat doesn't survive the meat itself as a substance doesn't survive like the small intestine. By the time it's in your colon, it's not meat anymore. It's been broken down. It's been highly broken down. Whereas like you eat corn and it's in your shit. You can't digest it. You can't digest broccoli fiber. You can't digest fiber at all. Fiber doesn't digest. That's why when you count your carbohydrates, you do net carbs, you subtract the amount of fiber, because fiber is indigestible. And not even a gorilla can digest fiber. Everybody likes to say fiber, gorillas are strong and they eat nothing but fiber all day. Well, they have a cecum, and in humans, the cecum is the appendix, which is atrophied and largely vestigial. You don't really use it. That's why so many people get their appendix removed. It's vestigial. You don't use it. That's what the cecum is in a gorilla. And the cecum houses the bacteria that turns fiber into short-chain fatty acids. And just so you heard that correctly, it turns the fiber into fat. There are actually very few animals on the planet, like hummingbirds and certain bats, that actually survive on carbohydrates as an energy source. So, as a primary energy source. So, and the gorilla doesn't even get protein from the food it eats. From my understanding, the gorilla gets its protein from that bacteria as it dies off and reproduces and dies off and reproduces. It absorbs the dead bacteria as protein. That's where the gorilla gets its protein from. We don't have that mechanism. We don't have that in our body. We are not made to eat plants. We have a very short large intestine and a very long large intestine, and that is indicative of a carnivore. Now, we do have a lot of herbivore traits. Our teeth are not exactly the most carnivorous teeth in the world. That's because, many millions of years ago, our ancestors were frugivores and herbivores. But the way that we evolved, not every carnivore on the planet has sharp claws and teeth. A blue whale is a carnivore. It doesn't have any teeth at all. They just, you know what I mean? Like, our weapons were our brains, and the ability to make tools and weapons, and our ability to hunt. To develop hunting strategies. That's part of what made our brains so big. We had to become smarter so we can do all these things, so we can satiate our desire for meat. And we have the lowest stomach acid in the entire animal kingdom. It's down there with vultures and hyenas, probably because at first our taste for meat developed from us scavenging the kills of other predators. I've actually seen videos of I think some kind of monkeys or chimpanzees in South America that a black panther will kill an animal, and they will harass it until it leaves it, and then they will eat its kill. So, and by the way, just finishing off with gorillas actually have to eat their own shit in order to get the B vitamins that the bacteria they produce. The B vitamins that the bacteria produce, they shit that out, and they have to re-eat their poop to get to digest the B vitamins. So if you want to be like a gorilla, have fun with that. And that's not even on the spiritual side, but it just goes to show that humans are not herbivores, humans are not gorillas. We can tolerate eating plants, but they really don't do anything for us, guys. They're full of anti-nutrients. Plants don't want to be eaten, and they like to deprive their nutrients from everything that eats them. And that's what anti-nutrients are. That's what gluten is. That's what gliadin is. That's what phytates and oxalates are. And it doesn't just block the nutrients from being absorbed, so you can't derive any nutrition from them. It also attacks your joints and your skin and your kidneys. What are kidney stones? Kidney stones are oxalic acid crystals that form in your kidneys. And where does oxalic acid come from? It comes from oxalates that come from plants. So, I've gone on way longer than I wanted to with this, but you're just not made to eat plants. So it makes absolutely no sense at all, that you have to be spiritual. In order to be spiritual, you have to basically starve yourself. I've heard of this concept of the breatharian, and I've never seen any evidence for it. Not that the evidence would just be there. Not that anybody who found evidence of people who just functioned, whose bodies' metabolisms just operated without the need for exogenous nutrition. But it just, I don't know. Anybody who understands like biochemistry and cellular biology and mitochondria and everything, you kind of get a pretty good idea for how that's just absolutely nonsense. We don't have the mechanisms to turn sunlight into energy. That's what plants are for. And we don't have the biology to digest plants. That's what herbivores are for. That's why we have predators and prey. That's the circle of life. Okay? And I'm sorry, but you are the top of the food chain. You are the apex of apex predators. We eat other apex predators. We eat alligators and snakes. And I suppose some people in some countries eat lions and tigers. We eat bear. We are, people hate us for it. Like they just, there's a good amount of self-loathing that in human society from social engineering, and that has led a lot of people into veganism, has led a lot of people into the mental illness of thinking that, that first of all, that you're not harming any animals by eating plants. You absolutely are. And second of all, that, that you can, believing the lie that you can get just as much, if not more nutrition from plants than you can from animals, not true at all. And then also believing that there's something inherently spiritually toxic, if not physiologically toxic, certainly not physiologically toxic, but there's so it's not physiologically toxic, it's physiologically optimal, but it's spiritually toxic to consume animal flesh and animal products. And it just don't make any sense. It makes absolutely no sense. Life on this planet, life in this universe, I would imagine. I've never been to another planet, and I don't know what life is like on other planets. There's almost certainly life on other planets. But life on this planet requires suffering and death. There's no other way to do it. And the more you try to tip the balance and reduce suffering and death, the more suffering and death you inevitably end up creating. Because plant agriculture, again, is mass animal slaughter. It's terrible for the environment. All the petrochemical fertilizers and pesticides end up in the ecosystem. They kill and deform the wildlife, and just pollute the environment in general. And it's just really terrible. And it has no place in the world. And it was a big, giant mistake. And it was mostly created to raise a population of serfs and slaves. The ruling class didn't really eat. They didn't really eat a lot of grains. The grains and the bread, they did eat some grains and bread, but they also ate, meat. They ate a lot of meat. Whereas the slaves just ate nothing but bread and beans. They called it gruel. It's gruel. It's food for slaves. We were able to blow our population up, but human health in the aggregate since that time has taken a very, very steep decline. We're shorter, our brains are smaller, our jaw lines have changed, not for the better, and lifestyle diseases have just exploded. Not just in the last 100 years. Even before that, it wasn't as rampant as it was today. But you didn't see cancer and heart disease in prehistoric man, pre-agricultural revolution man, earlier than 20,000 years ago. There was no cancer or heart disease or diabetes. Do you see diabetes in nature? Does a bear have diabetes? Does a deer have diabetes or heart? You ever see a deer die of a heart attack? Maybe now that it's out in the fields eating GMO corn. Lots of GMO corn and soybeans, GMO soybeans. I'm sure they're suffering a great deal from that. But anyway, I've gone off on too many tangents here, and it just doesn't make any sense. Spirituality is not necessarily about your physical appearance, your physical fitness, but like I said, you're not going to be able to connect to spirit as well if your hardware is all gummed up. Or to put it another way, the Bible says, not saying that the Bible is right about everything, but this is something that the Bible is correct about. Your body is a temple or a vessel of the Holy Spirit that dwells within you. So you are an expression of the Holy Spirit, just as everything is. But you're a higher form of the Holy Spirit, expressing itself and experiencing itself as itself. And it's only the ego that makes us think that we are something separate from that. My name is Steven, and I'm a firefighter, and I'm a father, and I'm a white man, and I'm an American. All of these different ways that they chop us up into little tiny pieces, when we're one with every blade of grass, every tree, every molecule of air, every galaxy, and every super cluster of galaxies in the entire universe, in the entire multiverse. We're all one with all of it. Nothing is really separate. So that requires not only being able to connect with spirit, not having your temple all gummed up and full of garbage, but it also requires, spiritual practice, and meat has absolutely nothing to do with that in the negative sense. If anything, you need meat for your brain to function, you need meat for your heart to function. So that's my talk for today, and I hope there's a lot of people who have gotten caught up in the whole idea that spirituality requires you to not eat dead things. Like you have a digestive system. Like, you can eat a piece of celery, it might be alive in your mouth, but as soon as you start digesting it, it's dead. As soon as the enzymes and the stomach acid get a hold of it, it's dead. It's a dead thing. And the enzymes don't necessarily survive the digestive process. And things that they say that you need, like phytonutrients, first of all, they're found in meat also. And second of all, a lot of antioxidants that are in plants are only antioxidants for the plant itself. Like, it'll act as an antioxidant within the plant itself, but when you eat it, it's pro-oxidant. It's creating oxidants, and it raises the antioxidant content in your body to counter the pro-oxidants that you're consuming. So that's kind of lie to you about how good plants are for you. This is one example. And I can go on a million tangents about this all day long, but I won't. Thank you for listening. Eat your meat, and do it ethically, of course. Do it as ethically as you can. Like, if you have a local farmer who's raising beef, buy your beef from them. Get to know them. Make sure that they're being, raised and treated well. And you don't have to get into these arguments with vegans about who kills more animals if you're eating grass-fed beef or grass-finished beef. Because you will eat the equivalent of maybe one cow a year. One cow a year dies. One animal, one single solitary soul, gone for you to survive for a year. As opposed to a vegan diet, which requires millions and millions, countless millions dead, countless millions of birds killed every year just to grow rice. You know what I mean? Like, the argument ends there. And it's the most nutrient-dense food on the planet. And if you can go out and hunt wild food, go for it. If you can go out and fish wild fish, go for it. But if you're in the grind and too busy for all that, or if you can't kill enough deer to feed you for a year like most people can't, that's fine. Just get grass-fed, grass-finished beef, and you cannot beat it. You can't beat it. It's the most ethical, nutritious, and environmentally sustainable food on the planet. And I have a feeling that it's not really interfering with your spiritual vibrations. Love you guys.